Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Snitch. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins with the introduction of a man named John Matthews. John is a boss in a contracting company and is known as a very kind boss to his men. However, John does not like workers who seek the attention of superiors to get extra points.
No, there's no OT unless it's authorized.
John and his family were celebrating his daughter Isabel Matthews' birthday at home. His wife, Lisa, was also very happy with the celebration. However, John's happiness disappeared instantly when Sylvie, his ex-wife, told him that their son, Jason, had been arrested by the police. It all started the day before when Jason had a video call with his friend, Craig. At that time, Craig told Jason that he would send a package of 2,000 pills worth $7,000 to Jason's house. Craig asked Jason to help sell the pills, and some of the pills could be used by Jason and his girlfriend, Amanda, who is an addict. However, Jason refused because he and Amanda were only users, not dealers.
Cheese is what it is, alright? And some of that could be yours.
No, I'm good, man.
After that, Jason hung up the video call because his mum was coming. The next day, it turned out that Craig had sent the package to Jason's house, even though Jason had rejected it the previous day.
Package for Jason Collins?
Yeah, that's me.
Have a good one.
Thanks, man.
However, out of curiosity, Jason opened the package. Under the pills, there was a tracking device, and immediately, the police broke into Jason's house. Jason tried to escape, but his efforts were in vain until he was finally caught by the police. At the police station, John and Sylvie met with his lawyer to inquire about Jason's condition. Initially, Jason was only going to be detained for a short time, but John's lawyer explained that Jason's case included a federal crime because the amount of drugs found was very large. As a result, Jason would be charged with drug dealing. Lawyer John also said that this was all because of Craig, the person who sent the drug package to Jason. It is known that Craig had previously been arrested by the police for the same case, but he instead looked for a scapegoat, namely Jason, so that his sentence would be lenient. During their conversation, the lawyer explained that Jason would be charged with a heavy sentence of 10 years in prison and would be tried later that night.
Jason is facing a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison.
10 years?
Are you out of your mind?
Later that night, Jason was seen in orange clothes entering the courtroom. He was charged according to the lawyer's previous explanation. John, Sylvie, and their lawyer returned to see Jason the next afternoon. The lawyer explained that Jason's 10-year sentence could be reduced to just 2 years with 1 year probation, as long as Jason was willing to provide information about whether he had any friends interested in selling drugs. Jason replied that he didn't and didn't know anyone who would. Even if he did, he wouldn't tell him because he didn't want to victimize someone else, like Craig did to him. At that point, John and Sylvie continued to persuade Jason to accept the offer because the case would go to the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor could increase Jason's sentence to 30 years in prison, meaning he would only get out when he was 50. However, Jason stood his ground. He didn't want to frame anyone and told John he would accept and serve his sentence.
Baby, please.
I'm not doing it. I won't do it.
I'm not gonna let that happen to you, son. You hear me?
You're not the one who'd have to do it.
With the help of his friend, John finally met the best prosecutor in the city, Joanne. Here, John asked if his son's prison term could be reduced. Joanne replied with almost the same answer as John's lawyer, explaining that the government respects the law, especially when it comes to drug cases. The only way Jason's sentence could be reduced was if Jason helped the government catch other drug dealers. John offered himself, asking, "What if I do it?"
What if I did it for him?
What?
What if I helped you make arrests?
It's not the way it works.
After that, John met Jason in prison. Jason told him that in the past, the person who threw eggs at John's house when he lived with his new wife was himself, because he didn't like John living in a big house with his new family, while he had to live in a small house with his mother. John actually already knew that, and had forgiven Jason. Apparently, John had invited Jason to live with him before divorcing Sylvie, but Jason refused. Jason then admitted his guilt for accepting the package, even though he knew what was inside, and he swore to John that he had no intention of selling the drugs because he was not a dealer. Jason knew he had to be punished, but not by being framed like this. Hearing this, John felt very sad, and he promised Jason that he would do everything possible to get him out of prison.
I'm not a drug dealer. You believe me, right?
Of course I believe you. promise you I'm gonna get you out of here.
Later that evening, John set out to find a drug dealer in his town. He had also prepared a recording camera to be used as evidence.
What you want?
Coke.
However, instead of getting the drugs, John was ganged up on by young punks. The next day, Joanne called John into her office. Because John was stubborn and would not stop doing the same thing as last night, Joanne finally agreed to help John as long as John could catch a drug dealer with at least 500 grams of evidence. However, Joanne is not responsible for the risks that will befall John later. John agreed.
In cocaine, that would be at least 500 grams or half a kilo.
When he returned to his office, John checked his employee files individually to determine if anyone had been involved in criminal cases. Finally, he found an employee file named Daniel James. In the file, Daniel was recorded as having been involved in criminal cases twice and was arrested for dealing drugs. The next day, after work, John took Daniel to a cafe for a chat. John explained that he wanted to enter the drug business there and asked Daniel to introduce him to people he could work with. John argued that he wanted to earn more than he already earned from his current company. However, Daniel refused, saying that his goal in working for John's company was to rebuild his life with his small family. He also said that if he was arrested by the police again, he would be jailed for 25 years. However, John only wanted to be introduced to people he could do drugs with and promised that Daniel would not have to get involved. John even offered $10,000 if Daniel would help him. Even so, Daniel refused and suggested that John go home and be grateful for his life.
I'd appreciate it if maybe we just pretend that this never happened, okay?
I just need an introduction.
I think you ought to go home. You ought to be happy with what you got.
When Daniel left John and had not gone far, John suddenly called him and offered $20,000 if Daniel would help him. On the way home, Daniel saw his son hanging out with adults. He told his son to come home immediately.
Go on. Hold on. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you gotta stay away from my son, you hear me?
When they got home, as usual, Daniel's wife Vanessa had to go to work if she got a call from her boss as a karaoke guide. Even though it was late at night, she had to keep working to make ends meet because Daniel's salary was insufficient to cover daily expenses. Then, Daniel advised his son not to hang out with the adult gang anymore because he was worried that his son would fall into the black world. Here, his son said that he no longer had any friends since moving into the apartment.
I love you, man. I'm proud of you. You need to be smart.
While contemplating the fate of his family, Daniel thought back to John's offer this afternoon. The next day, after work, Daniel met John and agreed to take him to a drug dealer he knew.
Just keep going, man. All the way to the end. Don't stop.
Right here.
Good.
When John arrived at the location, he waited in the car while Daniel went down to meet his partner, Malik. Malik was Daniel's drug business partner in the past before he was jailed. Daniel immediately explained the purpose of his visit to Malik, namely that a friend of his was in the car wanting to do drug business with him. Before entering, John activated the recording device he had prepared. When he met John, Malik asked why a successful person like him would want to enter a risky business. John replied that the economy was getting worse, and he was not sure his company's capital would return. To keep his company going, John is willing to do anything, as he has sacrificed everything for it. He added that if Malik needed transport, he could transport him in his truck with little risk. Hearing John's serious answer, Malik didn't fully believe him. He also gave John a chance to prove his seriousness, namely by the way John had to take Malik's drugs. If John succeeds, he will be paid a percentage of the proceeds from the sale of the drugs. After both parties agreed, John and Daniel immediately left. While in the car, Daniel asked for the $20,000 that John had promised because he had introduced John to the drug dealer. However, John refused and said that he would only pay $10,000, and if Daniel wanted to come along during the drug pickup later, John promised to give another $10,000. Reluctantly, Daniel agreed to go along. The next day, John met Joanne in her office and gave her a recording of his conversation with Malik the day before. Joanne was amazed by John's struggle and assigned Agent Cooper to lead the police team that would arrest Malik later. She also promised to release Jason within 6 months. John agreed, then hurried away.
We arrest Mr. Anderson, and I will reduce Jake's sentence.
John said goodbye to his wife at home, saying he was going out of town on business for 2 days. Meanwhile, Daniel also said goodbye to his wife, explaining that he would deliver his boss's package out of town and did not know how long he would be gone. Before John left, Agent Cooper told him that a bugging device and GPS had been installed in his truck, so Agent Cooper and his team could monitor all his movements.
Just be yourself, John. Try to be something you're not. They're bloodhounds, they'll smell it right away.
After that, according to Malik's orders, John and Daniel drove out of town to the drug pickup place. After a long journey from night to day, they finally arrived at their destination. There, they unloaded 2 sacks of cement carried in a truck. Then, some men opened the contents of the cement, and then they put several packages of drugs into it. However, suddenly, something out of the scenario happened. As it turned out, the people who attacked the place were El Topo's men. El Topo was the man in charge of the place, as well as the drug maker and dealer in his area. But for some reason, he shot at his own men who were guarding the place. Since the package of drugs was already in John and Daniel's hands, they didn't care about the attack and rushed out of there. Then, after the incident, Malik got a phone call from El Topo. El Topo said that he liked Malik's driver, who could overcome the conditions of the attack like earlier and prioritize the package. Then, El Topo asked Malik to bring the driver to meet him. It can be concluded that the attack was just a test for a drug courier in prioritizing his goods. Meanwhile, elsewhere, John and Daniel are now in their office replacing the truck due to the gunshot marks. Then, Daniel calls Malik, telling him that the goods have arrived. However, Malik suddenly changes the pickup location and asks John to deliver the goods in a pickup truck. Because of this change of plan, John goes into his room to call and inform Agent Cooper that there is a change.
Raven 1 over the following location.
When John came out of his room, Daniel pulled a gun and asked, "Who did you just call?" John replied that he had just called his wife, but Daniel didn't believe him because John's mobile phone was in the car. John argued that he had deliberately used the office phone so that his wife wouldn't worry because he was already at his office. Hearing John's convincing explanation, Daniel finally believed him. After that, they went to deliver the drugs. When they meet Malik, it appears that they have been targeted by a sniper who is ready to shoot Malik when Agent Cooper gives the order.
Visual confirm of the exchange.
Just hold until my signal.
There, Malik checked the contents of the package to make sure whether it was drugs or not. After checking, he then gave the payment to John. Malik also said that someone wanted to do big business with John. From the listening device attached to John's body, Agent Cooper heard the conversation and decided not to shoot Malik, then let him go.
Some people that want to sit down and talk. Could be some serious paper. Real serious. What? I'll let you know.
Let him go.
Repeat.
This leaves John confused, wondering where Agent Cooper is and why he didn't execute Malik. At home, Lisa immediately spoke to John, questioning why there was no news. She also suspected that John was hiding something from her. There, John finally told her that he was currently helping the police make drug deals to reduce Jason's prison term. Hearing this, Lisa was angry and sad because she was afraid that something would happen to John. After all, John's child is not only Jason, but also Isabel. Then, John confirmed to Lisa that he would do the same thing if Isabel faced problems later.
You have a family here too. You have more than one child,
And I
John!
did the same thing for her. You know that.
The next day, John emotionally met Joanne and Agent Cooper in the courtyard of his office. John asked why Agent Cooper had just let Malik go, even though John had sacrificed so much. Agent Cooper replied that he was targeting a bigger target, the person Malik was talking about last night. Annoyed, John returned to his office. When he arrives at his office, Sylvie calls and asks him to come to the police station immediately. Daniel, who saw John leaving in a hurry, borrows his friend's car to follow. Arriving at the police station, Sylvie tells John that Jason was attacked by another prisoner and is now being treated for a cut that needs stitches. After calming Sylvie down, John goes out and does not expect Daniel to suddenly appear in front of him and ask who John is visiting. Finally, John tells him the truth, that he is working with the police. Hearing John's explanation, Daniel is shocked and panicked because if Malik finds out, the two of them will certainly not survive.
What about my son, man? I got a son, John.
You're dead, man.
Daniel then returns to his house and tells Vanessa and his son to immediately go to her mother's house because he is currently in trouble. Meanwhile, John, afraid that Daniel would tell Malik about this situation, immediately returned to his house. However, when he arrived home, Malik was already there. Malik's arrival was to bring John to meet with El Topo.
Come on, man, El Topo, wait.
Arriving at El Topo's headquarters, John was first checked. Luckily, there were no more listening devices on his body. After that, El Topo came to see John and tasked him with sending his money to Mexico. There, El Topo asked John to deliver it and emphasized not to invite anyone.
You will make this next trip alone.
The next day, John met Agent Cooper in his office. John told him that the drug dealer knew about his wife and child. Agent Cooper calmed John down because he had already marked John's name before starting this case. So, anyone who wants to find data about John will first be reported to Agent Cooper, so that data about John's past will remain safe. Then, Agent Cooper asked who the person Malik was referring to was. John also explained that what Malik meant was El Topo. Hearing El Topo's name, Joanne also promised John that if she managed to catch El Topo, she would ask the judge to release Jason one day after the arrest. Before delivering El Topo's goods, John arranged a plan with Agent Cooper. After that, John went to see Jason in prison and said that he was very impressed with Jason's attitude of not wanting to trap his friend. Meanwhile, John felt guilty about himself because he was framing his subordinate, Daniel. After that, John went to see Daniel to thank him for not telling Malik he was working with the police. Surprisingly, Daniel instead said that he was willing to help John tomorrow. The next day, John immediately went to the El Topo location to pick up the money he would send to Mexico. After loading the money into the truck, John drove off, with El Topo's men following close behind. Elsewhere, Daniel is seen waiting for El Topo's men to leave Malik's house, who is planning to help secure John's money transfer. After El Topo's men leave, Daniel begins to attack Malik. Malik, who was lying on the ground after being shot, was forced by Daniel to give him El Topo's phone number. After getting El Topo's phone number, Daniel sent the number to John to be given to the police. Meanwhile, El Topo's men had just received information from a traitorous police officer that John was a police informant. One of the men in the car then orders his friends to kill John immediately and inform El Topo about this.
John, can you hear me?
They know! Get Jason in protective custody! They'll have people on the inside!
¡Hijo de puta!
In the middle of the chase, the tire of the truck John was driving was shot, causing the truck to roll over. Luckily, Agent Cooper's men arrived on time and immediately helped the injured John. Elsewhere, Cooper and his team broke into El Topo's house but did not find him because he had fled. However, when Agent Cooper is about to chase El Topo, he encounters him, so Agent Cooper orders the other officers to give chase.
Hands now!
No.
Shut it off!
When El Topo's car was surrounded, it appeared that El Topo and his son surrendered without resisting. Eventually, El Topo was arrested. After the incident, Joanne held a press conference to inform the media and the public that her team had captured a high-level drug syndicate, namely Juan Carlos or El Topo. Then, Joanne met John and praised his extraordinary struggle. She also told John that Jason would be released tomorrow at 7 a.m. Not only that, but John's family will also be given a witness protection program to anticipate El Topo's men who want revenge. Meanwhile, Daniel went to Agent Cooper's office. There, Agent Cooper asks Daniel why he refused the offer of witness protection. Daniel replied that he had his own plan to disappear. Later, Agent Cooper gave Daniel a check for $100,000 for helping John catch El Topo. Daniel was pleased and would start a new life with the money, along with his wife and son. The next day was the day John, his family, and Sylvie, his ex-wife, were waiting for. With a sad look, Jason comes out of prison and hugs his mother and father.